Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Talia Markajani, and I'm back with the Good Mood podcast. I know it's been a long time, and so I thought I would create an episode to talk about a couple things I've been thinking about and reading about in the last few weeks and months. And maybe this can become a trend on the podcast where it's sort of like current news or current events in the world of mental health and hormones and metabolic health. And so there's a couple things I want to talk about today, and they're all within the topic of muscle health, metabolic health, fat loss, and energy creation. I think if you've been paying attention in the health world, this is a big area of focus currently. I've talked about this before, but we know that 88% of people in North America are metabolically unhealthy. And what that means is that they exist on a spectrum between insulin resistant to full on diabetic. And that is characterized by higher levels of fasting insulin and eventually higher levels of glucose and higher levels of a marker called hemoglobin A1C or HbA1c, which is the typical target, the typical thing that's tested in screening for diabetes. And we know that this metabolic dysfunction can affect our energy levels, can contribute to weight gain. It can manifest after menopause as our estrogen and progesterone levels drop. And it can affect brain health. We know that Alzheimer's, we used to think it was caused by amyloid plaques and tangles in the brain. And now more research is pointing to this idea that Alzheimer's and dementia are type 3 diabetes or insulin resistance in the brain. Metabolic issues can cause infertility. And we also know that muscle plays a big role in supporting metabolic health because muscle on the body it acts like a glucose sponge. And so after eating, if you have a lot of muscle, the muscle soaks up the glucose using it for energy. And that brings down glucose spikes after a meal, especially if you move those muscles. And that reduces the amount of insulin that needs to be released post-meal. And over time, that can bring down fasting insulin levels. Muscle is also a great way to use insulin because insulin is a hormone that is anabolic, meaning that it tells our body to put on muscle, but in most cases, it tells people to gain weight, to gain fat mass. And so the more muscle we have, the better our metabolic health, the better our brain health. There's a muscle-brain connection. Human beings, I mean, our brains developed to help us ambulate, to help us get around, to find food and to make connections, to procreate. And so we really aren't, we aren't much. Movement is part of how we survive. It's part of how we interact with the world until very recently, when you didn't really have to move much in order to make interpersonal connections, to find food. Now you can just Uber Eats it. So our brains and muscles developed in a very connected way. And this bears out in research where we find that